Coming up on this episode of the Roundtable, the fundamental tension that is literally embodied in Gavin Newsom, right, is that after the 2024 election, much as the 2016 election ushered in this grand reckoning on the left about how we are not, is we reaching out to the middle class of middle America enough? Like, are we going to the Rust Belt? Let's send investigative journalism teams to find out like what it's like to live in Appalachia. And they did that for about 15 minutes, and then they came right back to their coastal cities and reported that, in fact, it's because they're all doing a big racism. Like, it's all because of how bad these people are. And it's starting to look as if like the analog to that after 2024 is like, we must conduct an anthropological survey of this creature called the American male. Like, there is like, what is men? Like, what do they? I hear the weightlifting. Like, I understand that perhaps, and so now you're seeing all these think pieces that genuinely have the tone of like some PhD postdoc out of Papua New Guinea reporting on the like bizarre customs of this like tiny tribe.
Welcome, everyone, once again to the Roundtable, the publisher and editors podcast here at the American Mind at the Claremont Institute. I'm your host, Ryan Williams, president of the Claremont Institute and publisher of the American Mind and the Claremont Review of Books. We are joined, it's been a while, but we're joined by eminent guest and writer and author and screenwriter and one of the most famous Suds Anons out there, Peachy Keenan. Good to have you back. And Spencer Clavin is here as well. What's your fake title of the week, Spencer?
Oh man, I'm not supposed to come up with it. That's the whole point of I don't have to host.
You're peripatetic ICE editor. That's what you are.
That's the immigration enforcement editor at the American Mind. I was going to say I'm the face cell. Is that what you call it when you're not anonymous? What's it called? Like the
face lord
editor. Face lord. There you go. I'm the face lord immigration enforcement editor. So you see me coming right before I kick you back into your home country.
Well, I mean, Peachy's here. You all probably know why. Well, she's good on any topic. She's beautiful. She's charming. She's smart, but she's also on the ground in Los Angeles, giving us an update on the battle for LA. Just to catch everyone up who has been living under a rock. Trump has National Guardsmen in LA. Newsom has branded himself the head of the resistance. The Democrats' talking point seems to be that all was going swimmingly until Trump decided to escalate things. It was, just some people having some fun watching some cars burn. Why did everyone have to get so uppity and send in troops? Now it's a borderline constitutional crisis. This is somehow a rehearsal for martial law. It's all very bad. Peachy, what's your assessment so far of our beloved, my former and your still beloved home state?
Yeah, first Donald Trump burned down half of Los Angeles, and now he's causing all these riots and looting. I mean, why? What? When will he stop? How will he stop him from doing this to us? This is sort of like a little bit of redux of 2020 with the BLM riots in LA for months, a year plus every weekend. There were these street takeovers. There was fires on the freeways. There was rocks being hurled at cops. It was a giant plate glass window shortage in Los Angeles because they smashed all the storefronts at the Grove, Rick Caruso's, beautiful mall, the Americana, all over Melrose, West Hollywood. Like, that was just every weekend. You couldn't go to Fairfax. You couldn't go. And those stores some of them are still boarded up. We are still dealing with the 2020 George Floyd riots here. Absolutely. I mean, downtown Santa Monica, some of it is still boarded up from, there was 2 weeks of burning every building. They looted the hospitals. It was, it was like crazy. So this is not new to LA. This has been going on for, really 5 years now and at a lower level. And it feels like the same kind of groups have been triggered now, but these aren't really BLM. This is sort of like MLM, like Mexican Lives Matter somehow, mixed in with the usual, public union, the public sector unions, the SEIU. The president of the SEIU got arrested, which tells you exactly who's down there. The guy who was, dropping off the boxes of brand new tactical riot gear and gas masks to all of the, Latinx protesters is a member of Local 399, which is the Hollywood Truckers Teamsters Union, which is also radical socialists, of course. So the usual suspects are out in force. And then you have the local Latino, the Los Doyers fans who will take any opportunity to wave the Mexican flag and the El Salvadoran flag, their national pride. Unfortunately, this is not Mexico or El Salvador, although sometimes it feels like it. And so they're just trying to use this chaos that they created by having a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city and pin it on Donald Trump. And now Gavin Newsom seems to be going like he's spiraling in his TDS and trying desperately to pin this on the president. I don't think it's working.
Yeah, it really is that meme, like when the guy shoots the guy in the chair and he's like, why would Donald Trump do this?
Yes,
there's so many parts of it that are just fascinating to me. And I get to say fascinating now that I live in Nashville and not horrifying like I had to when I lived in LA during 2020. But maybe to start off, so Peachy, as you know, I used to live at Park La Brea, which is that giant apartment complex right in the area you're describing, like 3rd and Fairfax for people that know LA. The Grove was across the street. I woke up the day of the biggest riots, which I kind of watched from my apartment. I went out the next day and I was walking down, I think it was Fairfax, observing all the working class Black and brown people repairing their destroyed storefronts while a bunch of blue-haired white people, wandered past to go to the next protest carrying their picket signs. That sounds like a caricature, but it's not made up. I say this as a preface to one thing we're hearing right now from all of the average riot appreciators. And I think, Ryan, that quote you said about this is just people having fun watching cars burn. That wasn't made up. That's a real thing that they said. I think it was on CNN or one of the ABC maybe. So one thing we're hearing from that crowd is, did you know that 99% of Los Angeles is not on fire? LA is really big. If you haven't been here, you might not realize it. There are many neighborhoods. This is hilarious to me, especially recalling the effect of those 2020 riots, no matter where you live. I happen to be living quite close to Ground Zero, but what are you supposed to do? Just barricade yourself in the Palisades or Pasadena, find some nice neighborhood. I was wondering what your experience is of, are these sort of more contained than the 2020 riots as of yet, or is it basically just the same situation?
They're planning supposedly a big protest on Saturday in Santa Monica, which is where it kicked off on George Floyd Day in 2020. And this week is all the high school graduation parties. And there were several kids who could not get to some of those parties because of the 101 was shut down. And when any major freeway is shut down anywhere, it affects every other freeway becomes like a parking lot. So there were kids who couldn't get to parties. The kids they were banned from going down to the beach the other day on a senior skip day because, again, they had to go through downtown or go through their freeway. And that was just a no-go. No one was letting anyone go there. My friends who were at confession last night in downtown Pasadena, and they report seeing 6 ICE vans go right by the church. And I told you guys before we recorded that apparently the ICE agents here were staying at a new hotel that just opened in Pasadena called the AC Hotel. But they were doxxed. Their tires on their cars were slashed, and they were kicked out of the hotel. That's how we treat law enforcement officers here in Los Angeles. If you're a Capitol police officer on January 6th, you are treated like a holy saint and you have a golden, state funeral and golden casket. But if here, you're fair game and, they'll supply the bricks for people to throw at your head.
Jeez. Well, are we clear yet on what ICE was actually doing? So the narrative, as you indicated, is that they had ramped up these raids, that there were sweeps. I mean, there have been sweeps going on as part of the Trump effort, I think, to kind of get the, essentially to deliver on the promise that he made, one of his signal promises to end this immigration crisis and to deport the many of the illegal aliens that are here. So in Nashville, for instance, like this has been happening as a major sort of just news story that, like, many construction companies are sort of shutting down because a lot of their workers are getting rounded up, et cetera, et cetera. Home Depot is notorious. Anybody that lives in a region with one nearby knows that there are people clearly not here legally waiting to pick up work, and like they tend to cluster around Home Depot. But I've heard that ICE actually was not doing grand sweeps of just regular people the way that we're being told. It was much more targeted. Is that right?
Yeah, the information I've gotten from friends who are cops who have, I was told this actually last night, is that basically the LAPD is not allowed to ask anyone their immigration status, even if they arrest you for murder. Like, they're not allowed to talk about that with you. But the feds, the ICE agents who are here, were doing some kind of targeted either drug trafficking or human trafficking or some ring, supposedly. This is what Tom Homan said, direct from DHS. And so when they find those people and they find them with other people, they're federal agents, so they're actually required to ask the other people who are with the targeted person what their immigration status is. And if they're found to be here illegally or with expired visa or whatever it is, then they're kind of, I think the law requires them to be arrested, as far as I know. Whereas LAPD is like, don't ask, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
They have to ask, and they will arrest you if they find out that you're here illegally. So there was a lot of kind of incidental, I think, or not a lot, a few incidental, innocent, whatever, worker just trying to, he wants to just hang his drywall for $10 an hour or whatever it is. But they're hanging around with people who are ICE targets. So I think the lesson is, if you are here just to kind of stay under the radar and, do your, painting jobs at a Home Depot, don't go near the guys on the ICE list.
Right. And don't advertise on social media like the workwear guy did on Twitter that gives fashion advice. He sort of announced that he's here illegally.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Don't do that.
It led DHS's Twitter account to have a meme of him announcing his immigration status. And what movie was that from? It's from Spy Kids or something.
Spy Kids. Oh my gosh. That was such a deep cut. A movie I loved. I was the perfect age for that movie when it came out.
Deep
and
cut,
it's the guy that I think he went on to have sort of a minor career. The boy, there's a boy and a girl, and he's got some sort of Dragon Ball Z type eye.
Zoom in. Yeah. DHS is taking a close look at Derek Guy.
Yeah. Jeez. Well, I mean, you never thought you'd come to the American Mind Roundtable for advice, free advice for people who are here illegally, law-abiding, as it were, the illegal immigrants. But that's the kind of fun that happens when we have PG on. So the Gavin of it all, I have to ask you about this too, is I am old enough to remember 5 minutes ago when Gavin Newsom was the great sort of olive branch extender of the left. He was going to effect this marvelous rapprochement between the Manosphere podcasters of the right and the normal Joe non-extremes of the progressives. Now, all of that, I mean, frankly, the people that sort of bought that now look really silly to me. There was, at the time, we were all saying, don't trust this guy. This is obviously an op. Is there, what's Gavin's angle here, do you think? He's got something, he must have some idea about how this can benefit him politically, because that is sort of the dominating thought.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He did have that podcast moment where he was like, I'm one of the bros. Let's just talk to the right. I could be MAGA too. Let's go, guys. But I think, as we all know, he goes whatever way the wind blows. And any little wind will blow him. He just wants to whatever feels most politically expedient. I mean, everyone, and he knows it's California. And I mean, I do actually understand why he's doing this. His main donor base are the rich West Side people in the Palisades and Brentwood. There's no more Palisades. Manhattan Beach and Brentwood and Beverly Hills and Montecito and Santa Barbara and Marin County. And overwhelming, these are the rich white liberals, the Kamala liberals. Overwhelmingly, they are completely on his side. Completely, their TDS goes so deep, like in them. These, especially the women, it is so internal by now. It is, they can't ever break out. They're just all. So he's just sort of feeding into the TDS, I think, of his main donor base. And his wife is like the leader of that pack. She was out shopping in Beverly Hills yesterday with her, Longchamp pliage, like tote bag, like just not a care in the world, like feeling no pain. Like here I am at Saks, like it's just unbelievable. Like Marie Antoinette moment. Okay. With her bodyguard armed, like she's the safest woman in LA in Beverly Hills. Like all day, the last few days, all my friends in LA who are, very successful West Side private school kids who are now grown up and live here and are right wing, they're all sending me Instagram posts from their like private school friends who are liberals. And they're all just posting basically the equivalent of the George Floyd Black Square. Like, we are in solidarity with the migrants. We must support these, we must be anti the fascist Donald Trump. And they're even posting like how to go to a protest, like what to bring, gas mask, face mask, eye drops for the tear gas. Here's what, like none of these women from Brentwood are going to go to these protests, but they're going to pretend that they are, before they go on vacation to like the Mauna Kea in Hawaii. And so they're fully on Gavin's side. And I think that is what he is kind of drawing from now. Like he knows they'll never win the bros. They'll never, there is no center. And he has no choice basically to go all in with the left.
Yeah, first they came for the pupusa selling corpse rapists, and I said nothing, for I was not a pupusa selling corpse rapist. And then they came for the like flag waving Waymo burners. That does seem to be that like the fundamental tension that is literally embodied in Gavin Newsom, right? Is that after the 2024 election, much as the 2016 election ushered in this grand reckoning on the left about how we are not, is we reaching out to the middle class of middle America enough? Like, are we going to the Rust Belt? Let's send investigative journalism teams to find out like what it's like to live in Appalachia. And they did that for about 15 minutes, and then they came right back to their coastal cities and reported that, in fact, it's because they're all doing a big, big racism. Like, it's all because of how bad these people are. And it's starting to look as if, like, the analog to that after 2024 is, like, we must conduct an anthropological survey of this creature called the American male. Like, there is, like, what is men? Like, what do they? I hear the weightlifting. Like, I understand that perhaps, and so now you're seeing all these think pieces that genuinely have the tone of like some PhD postdoc out of Papua New Guinea reporting on the like bizarre customs of this like tiny tribe. And so, yeah, every time you make a gesture in that direction, like when Gavin did it, he kind of got burned on the trans thing because he had to say something about how everything on the progressive left is insane. But he's got those like what you're describing as like the sort of bodyguard having Beverly Hills moms that he can't like fall afoul of at all. So do you think that this is like this is a fatality for Gavin? Like how exactly does he? I mean, does he have to break one way or another? You said there is no center. Should we feel hopeful that like actually we will not be seeing Blue Sula President Gavin in 2028 or whatever?
I mean, yeah, it's so unclear. I mean, I keep thinking like, well, this is it. Like he'll never, he obviously has no chance on a national level. He can't beat JD Vance. Obviously we're going to go into a 12-year long or plus golden age with President Vance and President Rubio, on and on and on, right? He'll never get in. But then you look at he's just doubling down and doubling down and doubling down and has this huge base of support. He actually does here. And I think among the left, he's sort of like one of their heroes. He's like sort of the last the last straight white man standing on the left who, let's say, okay, he's sort of like, I guess he's heterosexual-ish. Like, who knows? Like he's,
yeah, he's metrosexual.
Metrosexual. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think he's just aware that he's sort of their last best hope. And I think he's getting lots of advice from like the Obama wing, and they're advising him like, it's all you, bro. Yeah. Kamala's not going to do it. Like it's, Buttigieg or whatever, he doesn't have it. Like it's on you. You got to save us. And so I think they're just doubling down and doubling down. And that I think will work in our benefit, but it is hard to know. I mean, it does look like they're trying to convince everyone so desperately that this is Donald Trump. And the protests popping off now in Texas and Chicago, and I'm sure they'll be in New York and everywhere soon, San Francisco. They really want to just pin all of it on Trump, just like in 2020, the instigator of the chaos, the January 6th insurrection, ICE is this sort of Nazi task force. It's sort of all they have. And I guess that is good for us. We want them to double down on the left. We want them to be irrational and unreasonable and tell us not to believe our lying eyes and to believe their lying mouths. I don't think it will work in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel, again, I'm having a hard time judging it objectively because of the difference in my personal location, right? Like the fact that I have left a blue city and come to a red state makes it feel less all-encompassing and engulfing. But it really does seem as if the way that the mainstream legacy press has cratered its own credibility, like just destroyed itself in the flames of the Biden age scandal, makes a real difference as we watch these riots going on. Like there's something so much more transparent and ridiculous. And I think people are really freaking fed up, like just sick. I'll tell you the ticket I really fear though is President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Vice President Hassan Piker. That's the one to watch. He's the guy they're really trying to turn into the Joe Rogan of the left, and he's actually talented.
I think Piker just got arrested. Didn't I see he was in
So much the better.
Am I thinking of him?
Yeah.
Maybe it was some other, I don't know. I can't keep track of all the fake podcaster guys. One of them, one big guy got arrested. I don't think she's got a shot either. There's no
she's
way.
Too much.
I think. Oh yeah. I mean, she makes Kamala Harris look like Thomas Jefferson. I mean.
Yep. True enough.
Well, Peachy, you mentioned the spreading protest movement, and I don't know if you all have seen this, but of course, it's the left. So an NGO was ready to go, and an umbrella group, I'm sure, have this spiffy website called No Kings. It's called nokings.org, and this is a bit of their messaging. In America, we don't do kings. It's got a nice logo with a sketched out, kind of half drying paint logo of a crown and a red X across it. They've defied our courts, deported Americans, disappeared people off the streets, attacked our civil rights, and slashed our services. That's the big tell, slash our services. The corruption has gone too far. No thrones, no crowns, no kings. On June 14th, we rise up. And then they have all sorts of resources, including upcoming calls and trainings. So a call tonight, a No Kings host update call. So you can sign up to be a host of a No Kings protest. No Kings marshal training for June, also tonight, June 11th. No Kings call for veterans and military families joining. That'll be on Thursday. Event attendees pre-mobilization mass call. That's on Thursday, June 12th. What's next in the fight mass call on the 16th. I guess that's the after action assessment and deployment, et cetera. And it looks like the epicenters for them, you mentioned some of them, Peachy: Manhattan, Atlanta, Houston, Phoenix, Chicago. And then they've got, 200 more dots across the country. I assume this is all places where hosts have signed up to have these protests. So it's this interesting, which we've mentioned, the interesting phenomenon on the left of what is real, what is manufactured, what is grass tops, what is actual grassroots. It's all kind of a mix, but more organized than not. And Rui Teixeira, longtime sort of disgruntled Democrat, especially at the left, hard left turn of his party, had a piece from the 9th of June. 2 days ago. We're recording on Wednesday, the 11th. The LA riots are a Trump ad. This was at the Free Press, the subhead of which was "Americans don't trust Democrats on immigration or law and order matters, and the party's response to the disorder in LA isn't helping." His one poll quote is, "Democrats do not have to cheer on every ICE raid, but they have to be seen to prioritize law and order and not deny the reality on the ground of violent protests." So in that ways, it's just another replay of 2020 with the fiery but mostly peaceful optics. We mentioned the NBC, I think it was NBC, Spencer. The guy said,
okay,
it's not out of hand. It's just if you move troops in there, it's really going to get out of hand. It's just people enjoying watching cars burn. Can't we just let them hang out? So I'm struck by I'm struck and encouraged politically in a way by the inability of the left to kind of tack where it needs to tack, given the response against the left that seemed to be in evidence with the 2024 election results. And then they're saying at once that Trump is provoking all this to get a reaction, and then they're whatever you think of that claim, rather than him just trying to uphold his oath of office, which I think is more his temperature on this question. They're saying that he's provoking all this intentionally, and then they seem to be playing right into his hands, both in their coverage of it and in this sort of latent encouragement and behind the scenes, fairly organized effort to run this playbook again. I don't think it's going to work with most Americans, but we'll see. Through extended family, I have some connection to blue sky left-wing Twitter, and a recent conspiracy theory that I heard that I thought was pretty interesting and totally implausible. That's why it's fun. Is that actually a lot of these ICE agents now are the pardoned January 6ers? They've been rolled into ICE. That's why they're masked up, and they shouldn't be allowed to mask. And so this is Trump's brown shirts. He rewards them for law breaking and then deploys them to ICE, which
that is such ridiculous. A Margaret Atwood take. Like, that really does come right out of The Handmaid's Tale, right? I mean, the whole basis of this is that it's been a while, not that long, but it's been a while since a president sent in federal forces against the wishes of the state,
right?
Law enforcement, right?
1965, we
okay,
read,
right?
Yeah. Hell, BJ.
Yes. Okay. So, but it seems irrelevant, like, especially given what everything Peachy has just said about Gavin, that you have a state leadership that is just like fully dead set against the actual federal law and enforcing it, which is simply not something you get to do. Like, there's so many of these arguments that just really feel like they are not going to fly. Like, the country has basically decided we're in favor of having immigration laws. We're not totally yet clear necessarily on what those immigration laws should be, but like, we think we should have them. And we are generally in favor of like not breaking laws. And so the argument that like you should just be able to decide that it's politically expedient to you not to enforce the laws, and then the federal government shouldn't be able to enforce federal law. Like, I mean, that's sort of like sanctuary city logic, and that seems like a pretty narrow band of people that appeals to.
Yeah, well, it's just caught up in the partisan. Yeah, you're allowed. You must, of course, abide by federal law if our people control the federal government. Yeah. But if bad man does, then all bets are off. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think most of the country is going to go for it, especially when a big part of ICE's procession through these cities and through these arrests has been to start with, I think, strategically a very good idea. They have announcements every day of, we arrested this guy who assaulted an 11-year-old who's covered in tattoos, and it's in that sense, it's a lot worse for them even than I think the BLM riots, because you have more of a parade of just totally unsympathetic perps who are the real reason that these riots are going on.
Yeah, and I also think that the normies, outside the kind of like hardcore liberals, like the kind of like well-off liberals in California I talked about, but a lot of the normies are getting radicalized. I mean, my husband and I have been getting text messages from people who aren't super political, who have been radicalized since COVID, and they're just like, Trump needs to get them all out. Like, enough is enough. Like, they're just done. 2020 primed them to be over it, and like, people are over it. And this friend of ours, his daughter's high school graduation was yesterday, at like a pretty good charter public high school for smart kids, a magnet, and a kid was arrested with a gun at the graduation ceremony. And this family is just, what's going on here? Like, what, what? Why is this the case? Why are there guns in schools? Like, why are the schools so bad? Why do we have to run around and go to these magnets and charters Oh, it's because the local public schools for decades have been filled with the children of illegal immigrants. And you don't want your kid literally to be the only child who speaks English and doesn't need remedial and doesn't need the free lunch. I mean, my local school here in the San Gabriel Valley, none of my neighbors send their kids there. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, these children just, they'll be like literally like the 1% minority at these schools. And people have been, this is building for so many decades in California. You go to the emergency room, anywhere in the city, you're going to be waiting 5-6 hours because people who don't have health insurance and probably aren't citizens are ahead of you in line. And so I think there's a lot of frustration and real enthusiasm. And I think the reason that Karen Bass instituted her curfew last night, she didn't want to. She finally put a curfew downtown LA, which means you got to get arrested now. She has to do arrests. It's because the pressure was so overwhelming, and they had seen the polls on CNN, the Harry Enten polls. Yeah. 59% of America is for this. Even Democrats are like, yeah, you got to enforce the law. So I think that they're looking down the barrel of like electoral extinction potentially.
Yeah, it's the meme is that you guys know the meme. I voted for this. Yes, I so voted for this. Actually, with those polling results, it looks like a lot of people were saying, well, I didn't vote for it, but man, I wish I would have. I'm definitely for it.
Sounds pretty nice. Yeah, and Trump's approval is back up. It had bottomed out. It looked like it was plummeting, and then it sort of recovered. No, this is another thing that the riot left like never quite seems to figure out, is that if your tactic is to tell people that when they oppose like rioting and bad behavior and grotesquerie, then they are against some minority group, like people conclude that minority group is for that thing. Like that is a sort of equation that goes both ways. So they did this with Black people, they did it with gay people, they're doing it with immigrants. It's like, the equation between, first of all, like all immigration is the same, illegal and legal. So if you're against people just like flooding across the border, you are against immigrants. Like you don't believe in our history of immigration. And then it's like, and on top of that, in order to really support immigration as a whole, like you have to be posting in support of the guy waving the Mexican flag on top of the burning car. And so then it's like, people are naturally going to, people who might otherwise actually be totally normie, middle of the road, like, well, I don't know, like, I don't want, Consuelo, my next door neighbor, to be deported, but I don't like violent criminals. You tell them long enough, like, actually all immigration means like riots and violent crime. Those people are going to get radicalized about immigration generally, and you're going to see support for like mass deportation in a way that you never would otherwise. This is something, I feel like we've seen this happen a lot of times.
Well,
yeah, it's like, what did you think America First was? Vibes, papers,
Vibes, policy papers. It's mass deportation. I listen to the New York Times daily occasionally to check in on sort of au courant left-wing opinion. And they had a ride along with ICE in Miami, one of their hosts. And it was, like 12 ICE agents to pick up this guy who's on their list. They knew he left his house around 8:40 a.m. every day so that ICE will surveil and then set up shop. So they grabbed him, and then his brother was there too. And after questioning his brother, they took him away also because he was also illegal. So it echoes what you were talking about or describing in LA too, Peachy, is a lot of these cities, sort of blue cities with big immigrant populations. ICE has sort of seems to be a concentric circle, a plan. You go in for the targets, and then question folks around them. And a lot of the time you get some good targets of opportunity.
And I just want to make one more point on the numbers. David Axelrod and other Democrats have been taunting President Trump for a long time, saying, Barack Obama deported way more than you, buddy. He deported 10 million. You're slowed down. You can't even deport, 10 a day? Like, look, you got to get those are rookie numbers. We did immigration. It was totally fine. And they're completely forgetting the fact that Barack Obama's immigration numbers were just border turnaways. Mm-hmm. Those were guys who took one step over the border and were just sent right back, like same day or, within a few days. And so that is not the same thing as going into towns and cities where people have been there for months, years, went set up shop, and then getting them out. Those Barack Obama never, ever took one of those people out, not even their criminals. That's why this country is so filled with illegals who are criminals, who are multiple returnees after being deported, because Gavin Newsom and Alejandro Mayorkas never bothered to go hunt them down and get them out because they knew the optics were bad for them. And that's all Donald Trump is now finally doing. And they are like, well, yeah, of course we don't want criminals here, but you're getting everybody. And yet again, still ironically taunting Trump that he's not doing it enough.
Yeah. And I think this may have a compounding effect, a positive one on public opinion in favor of all these deportations, because I checked maybe a week or two ago, and I forget, some headline flagged it for me, but violent crime is down 20 to 40% in a lot of our major cities. That was all before the riots started picking up. But I think there's either atmospherically through the worry about going out and marauding and getting caught and deported, combined with them getting rid of some of the worst folks, I think it's going to be an appreciable improvement of quality of life in a lot of these places. So I think that will be a nice, effectual counter narrative to the left's freak out over this. Well, it seems like ancient history now. We only do this podcast weekly, but we did want to talk a little bit about Musk and Trump. And also, did you guys see this? So Musk had a little bit of a black eye in his farewell White House thing. Is it been determined that was from Scott Bessent punching him? Or was that just a rumor? There was some rumor.
This was what, there is a really just fascinating interview with Freddie Sayers and Steve Bannon right after this happened. And they do kind of, Bannon flirts with a couple of things that he never quite commits to. One of them is we should deport Musk. And the other one is that, Scott Bessent decked the guy in the face, and that's how he got that shiner. So I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but it definitely seems possible.
Anyway, epic blow up. Musk gets disillusioned with the big, beautiful bill in the span of 20 hours on Twitter, seems to endorse Trump's impeachment. It was such a weird, epic and manic run for Elon that at one point, he said, Trump said, well, those nice government contracts you got there, maybe we'll have a look at them. And Musk said, thank you very much. I'm going to cancel the Dragon spaceship program, so we can't take people to the International Space Station anymore. And then some random Twitter account with 460 followers said, you guys are better than this. I mean, this seems a little bit extreme. And Musk goes, you're right. I will uncancel the cancel Dragon spaceship. I gave a quote to the Free Press. Our friend Gabe Kaminsky writes there, and I'll sometimes help him with a quote or two. And mine was sort of the one that he used. I said, it's understanding that Musk would be frustrated by a razor-thin majority in Congress, and a Congress that hasn't appropriated for decades. This is messy, but welcome to politics and the party, man. I mean, it illustrates the interesting phenomenon of Musk, who's a world-changing, world historical industrialist and entrepreneur and visionary, and at the same time seems to just be learning some of the ancient rules of politics that those of us who've been watching it and engaged in it for decades knew long, long ago, which is, yes, of course, Congress sucks. Yes, even this one after the 2024 election. And that legislation got through with one vote to spare out of the House. So, of course, it's going to be festooned with buy-offs and log rolling pieces. And, the other quote that wasn't used in mine was, look, if you want to do serious spending reform, you're not going to do it in this big, beautiful bill. It's a reconciliation thing, so it's limited. It can't really go after discretionary spending anyway. And what Trump needs to do now is to solidify the promises he made to the base, or deliver on them, solidify and entrench his majority, try to win, defy political gravity, and keep the House in the midterms. And then maybe there is some hope for real spending reform. But unfortunately, the problem is us. There's really no constituency out there for real deep spending cuts. So I don't know what Musk thought was going to happen, but it just showed his kind of, he's been in politics for a hot minute, and he's already throwing up his arms and taking his ball and going home.
I mean, this is an area where, when the bromance was at its peak, I think we talked on this show about how everyone was saying this is going to fall apart. It's going to collapse because every Trump relationship that gets this close ends in tears and flames. And this was something the left was like eagerly anticipating. And we were sort of saying, like, I don't know, it sort of looks different somehow. Like, it doesn't actually seem like it's headed to crash and burn. So when this happened, I was like, oh no, now we're going to have to go on the roundtable and just like recant, or I am going to have to say, like, I was so wrong. Like, look how this fell apart. But actually, the weirdest thing about this whole debacle is that Trump is far and away the cool, calm, and collected one. Like, it's Elon who's spinning out in ways that are kind of in keeping with, say, if you've like read the Walter Isaacson biography, he seems to be on some sort of like tear of one kind or another. And Trump has hit back because he's Trump, but he was actually pretty like he refrained from doing or saying anything that was like unrecoverable. Whereas Musk was like, he's in the Epstein files. He's like, I'm gonna cancel the space. I'm gonna cancel the Dragon. Like, so yeah, like Musk just came across as profoundly volatile and unstable. And Trump genuinely did come across to me as like a little bit different from the Trump that we've known in the past during these spats. My favorite take, which I say favorite because I just feel that it's really trying way too hard, was like all these libs are getting triggered because they've never seen two high team males like locking horns. You know, that was very funny to me because this is not even like, you know, this is not what it looks like when two people are having a fight that they're going to come back from in any respect. But like, yeah, I don't know. Musk does not seem to have managed to make government do what he wanted. And in fact, it sort of reminds me of the sequence of people throughout history who have tried to invade Russia. Like, you get Napoleon, you get Hitler, you get each one of these people like in sequence, sort of thinking they've cracked the code and figuring out, nope, it's still a really big tundra with like a bajillion people that they're willing to kind of throw at cannons, you know, and it doesn't work out. This is sort of analogous to the situation of when people try to treat the government like a business. It's like we had it under Clinton, we had it under Bush, you know, like if we can just get like a CEO who knows how to clean up in this here establishment, then it'll all like work out. And it turns out it's a really, really, really big bureaucratic tundra out there with a lot of sort of dangerous and difficult and thorny rabbit warrens. And Musk made that same discovery. So like now he's freaking out. On the other hand, his whole like crew of youngsters, this is something that people haven't noticed, but like the AI Zoomers that he brought in with him, some of them have in fact like stayed in government and are kind of quietly working in some of those less glamorous positions. So I wonder whether the like ultimate shakeout of all of this might not be that like Musk kind of flames out and goes back to his business, but like there is now injected into the government bureaucracy some like young blood that's really computer savvy and might be able to help when the inevitable financial crisis does come. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, it was so unfortunate to see them bickering. I do love Elon Musk. I'm very grateful to him, you know, obviously for everything he did to help Donald Trump win and to give us back our favorite social media platform,
Yeah.
which is very important to me. I was finally, you know, stopped getting like throttled and canceled all the time. And I think that the fight was not, two business rivals locking horns. It was really father son. It was really like prodigal son. His wayward boy came back, just like Joe had Hunter, who had his own substance problem. That was Elon,
Right.
and Elon is obviously an incredibly valuable asset to Donald Trump, and I feel like there was genuine fatherly fondness. He became almost like a grandfather to the little boy, little X, or whatever his name is.
X.
So, yeah, the guy with the right hook who took out his dad. Like, that's obviously bullshit. Excuse me, your toddler cannot give you a black eye unless they have a brick or something. Unless they're, unless they're in BLM. But they love each other, and I think he recognized that Elon has these sort of flights of irrationality or whatever it is. And then he kind of he spirals on his ketamine, and then he kind of sobers up, and he comes back, and today he apologized to the
But
president.
Peachy,
Which I
who
thought was
among
cool.
us has
Yeah,
not
right.
gotten
I
that
mean,
deep
hey.
into K-hole?
Anyway, if you've ever been to a bachelorette party in Vegas, you have a few rough days after that. Okay. I've never done Special K. I don't know, but I know that there's, obviously there's hangovers that come with that level, I guess he was doing. But I think Elon's problem in his life, if I can give Mr. Musk a little free advice, I did overlap with him a few years in college. I think I might have gone to one of his parties at some point. He is a techno optimist, right? And so for Gen X to be optimistic is already rare. We're all really deeply cynical and ironic people for my generation, for good reason. And that has been very protective of us. That has actually helped. It actually helps you. You never get too optimistic, because when things go wrong, you'll be like, "Well, I told you so." You're always win. So his optimism, I think, in government, he did think that my technological prowess, my competence, we can fix it all in a month. You can't actually fix these rhino senators. That's going to take several generations. And his optimism has also led him astray, let's say, in his personal life. Think when you have 5, 6, 10, however many baby mamas you do have, that may backfire on you in some ways that you are easy to anticipate. That your mother would tell you, honey, don't do that. You may get in trouble with. A few of them may get mad at you one day. Yeah. So that's just his, I think, sort of sweet and endearing innocence, really, for his very high IQ. So yeah, that's a little peachy advice for Elon. Is like be more cynical.
That's really interesting, especially in connection with what Ryan said about the ancient truths of government, these sort of basic, like gods of the copybook heading, like first principles. I think this is a problem that afflicts a lot of even our virtuous tech bros, right? Is that because their great skill is disrupting and inventing and charging forth into this sort of uncharted territory. But we often have occasion to remark on this show that like they seem to feel, many of them, that once you break into some level of technical know-how and excellence, all the old rules cease to apply. And you can always find this sentiment among like genuinely skilled scientists and technologists that like everything before Darwin, we just have to wipe away, right? Like human nature is completely transformed. We've learned, and they talk now about AI this way. We were discussing this a little bit last week, that like AI is going to somehow cancel out like human distinctiveness. And it's like, yeah, or you made like a really good new chatbot, right? And in fact, like people will do the same things, like the same economic rules will apply. It'll look a lot like the previous, like, technological disruptions of other economic situations. Like, I guess it is kind of, you run the opposite risk when you talk like this of being a stick in the mud and missing some revolutionary new thing. But typically rather, our default at Claremont is like, look, human nature is a real thing. It basically exists unchanged from like Herodotus onward, at least. Like Thucydides has a lot to say about it that still applies. You can find a lot about it in the Bible that still applies. And yeah, it's interesting that like both of what you guys are saying is about sort of like in some ways a virtuous like innovationism that just like skews that sort of forgets like basic home truths that you could, like, people with much lower IQs could have predicted for Musk, like how some of these things would go wrong.
Yeah. Musk has been quiescent now for the better part of a week or half a week. So we'll see how this all shakes out. We're running towards the end of our time. I'm going to drop, I don't know if we warned Peachy about this, or if you've listened to the Roundtable lately, but we've been doing some recommendations at the end here for various cultural delights, books you're reading, movies you like, whatever. Last week, we used Spencer's piece on the virtues of Roadhouse as the opportunity to, the original, of course, as the opportunity to recommend some good, bad movies. And I said this doesn't belong in the category of good, bad, but I recommended Catherine Bigelow's Breakout, one of my favorite movies, Point Break, set in Malibu, among other places. And then I don't know if you know this movie, Peachy, but It was one of my favorites on TV growing up. The 1989 Christian Slater skateboarding murder mystery movie, Gleaming the Cube.
That's a deep cut.
No, it was a very deep cut.
I don't think I saw it.
I'll let Peachy ponder this while Spencer and I go, and then maybe she has a recommendation or two. Spencer, what are you enjoying right now?
Okay, so it's funny, for like weeks and weeks, I've been thinking I really need to recommend this video game that I love, and then something keeps coming up that gets in the way, and that has happened again. So you're gonna have to wait yet another week to hear like my recommendation for the best video game of 2025. But actually, this week I would like to recommend a Broadway musical. I'm going to keep this as minimally theater kid as possible, I promise. But to geek out for just a second, like Broadway shows, genuinely great American art form. Like some of the true standards of the American songbook originate, have their source as musical numbers. Obviously, like Rodgers and Hammerstein, like big names, Irving, Ira Gershwin, Irving Berlin. Like these are like serious contenders for great American musicians. Falls on hard times, in my opinion, basically at the end of Stephen Sondheim's career. Sondheim is kind of the last like true artist in my view, who like has some flops but some really great stuff too. A variety of factors, the popification of all music, the sort of the tourist market have like encouraged these shows that I really think of as like live action roller coasters more than Broadway musicals. So you have like Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark, and like these sort of enormous, everything on Broadway for a long time has had to be what you now think of as like the worst excesses of a Broadway musical. Like when we talk about theater kids, when we talk about like, the Dear Evan Hansons of the world, I think we're now just equating the Broadway musical with these like hokey, over the top kind of popcorn shows. But the Broadway musical like didn't used to be that way. The classic Broadway show is like a few really great numbers laced into a genuinely sophisticated and interesting like American pop opera. And all of this is like a long-winded way of leading up to the fact that I was actually really stoked this year when the Tonys, the Tony for Best Musical, went to a show called Maybe Happy Ending, which I saw on Broadway before it was quite as big as it has now gotten. It has Darren Criss, if you know him from like his weird YouTube Harry Potter musical. It was written, I think, originally in Korean, but then finally got like English language distribution first or something, but became this sort of like runaway hit. It's a one act. It's literally, I don't know, 90 minutes, if that. It's two people, basically. There's a few others. It has some problems. Like not every number is fantastic. Some of the tech works beautifully. Some of it doesn't. But like, just to see that kind of a show win and to see it like play with interesting ideas about, what makes us human versus what makes us, what separates us from our machines. A lot of really good stuff. It's about two robots that fall in love. Obviously, I can't recommend that everyone go to New York and see it, but the cast album is finally on Spotify, so you can go find Maybe Happy Ending and tell me if I'm crazy to be like kind of into this musical.
Not crazy. I haven't seen it.
You haven't listened to it yet. You're no judge. I'm inviting our listeners into the conversation.
Yeah. John Podhoretz is a huge fan, Spencer.
Of that show?
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
he's an inveterate consumer of most things New York, including musical theater and plays. So, but he liked it as well.
Yeah, it's kind of against type because it is sort of about robots that gain sentience. So I shouldn't have liked it quite as much as I did, but it cleverly uses that as sort of a metaphor for like our mortality and questions about like, is it better to have loved than lost and all that sort of stuff. It's good.
Nice. I had this fantasy novel that I'd picked up at my wife's recommendation on Audible and then put on ice, but I restarted it a couple nights ago and I'm enjoying it again. It's a 2017 book, I think. Yeah. It won a bunch of awards, called Jade City by Fonda Lee. If you like, it's about, Jade giving special powers to the native inhabitants of this island in vaguely East Asia somewhere, and leads them to be fantastic street fighters and all the rest. So it's sort of a mix of a fantasy, family dynasty, gangster novel set in a kind of creative and interesting space. So I've been enjoying that. If you're into that sort of thing, and I know not everyone is, go check it out.
Sweet. That's last time you recommended a sci-fi novel, Ryan. It totally slapped. It also took me a really long time to finish that book, but it was really good. So putting it on the list.
Yeah, it's not as good as what's that book called that I recommended?
Fire Upon the Deep.
Fire Upon the Deep. The Werner Vinge book from the 70s. But it's fun. What about you, Peachy? What are you enjoying right now?
Well, I'm always on the hunt for movies I can watch with the kids. And, we were really like scraping the bottom of the barrel. And then my daughter started playing, my 9-year-old started playing her new piano song, which was the theme from Swan Lake. And I was like, oh, I absolutely adore Swan Lake. It's my favorite, really ballet. And I was sort of a theater kid. I love musicals. I love ballet, but it really felt like an antidote to like how depressed and crazy I've been feeling, like just to hear that piece of beautiful music. And I was like, oh, there's a movie kind of about this, Billy Elliot, which I haven't seen since it came out in the theaters, I think in the 90s. And so we watched Billy Elliot, which is basically the plot of Flashdance, like the poor working class kid who wants to become a ballerina. In this case, it's a little working class boy whose family is coal miners in the North and they're striking. And he discovers ballet, and he wants to become a ballet dancer. And it really takes you into this world that I don't think even exists anymore in England. Just watching the kind of downfall of England. These are, working class white English people. They were coal miners, like the poorest of the poor, and being exposed to the arts. And in those days, you could just be a poor kid and get into like a ballet academy, and what that meant, how life-changing it would be for a young person to kind of escape the drudgery and go to this sort of like artistic, creative world. And just that it ends with that fabulous Swan Lake performance, and the music is so beautiful, and it really feels like an antidote. And then I saw that Swan Lake is actually coming to Los Angeles this month, and so I'm going to take my daughter to see it. Hopefully, we'll have a whole like ballet. It'll be like a real interesting to see that downtown. And on the way into the city, you're seeing just every inch is covered in horrible graffiti and F America and F Trump. But we're going to go see a beautiful, majestic ballet.
Nice.
Love that. I've actually never seen the Billy Elliot movie because they made it into a musical, right? Down the line.
It's a great movie. It's very sweet.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I like 15 years ago, I was at Madame Butterfly at the Amundsen Center in LA, and it was one of these weird updated adaptations, and it was so bad we left at the intermission. But that was my last LA theater moment. It's been too long.
Yeah, they love to
can be hit or miss. I saw Shakespeare there once that similarly kind of
was bad.
Yeah, it was. I am like an actual Shakespeare enjoyer. I'm pretty bad at enjoying classical music, but really good at enjoying Shakespeare. But I did not vibe with this one.
Yeah, I should say everyone knows this, but Madame Butterfly, of course, is an opera. Calling it just theater is not quite fair. But yeah, it was a bad production. All right. Well, we have come to the end of our time once again. So thanks for joining us, Peachy. We'll do it a little more often, I hope.
Thank you.
And
yes.
Thanks for holding down the fort in Southern California.
Send prayers and tactical gear
and care packages. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, and we should add to you. You were blessed by a providential protection. I mean, your neighborhood in the San Gabriel Valley, or the one adjacent, nearly burned to the ground, or pretty much did. So I'm glad
we missed it by 2 blocks.
That's
Thank goodness.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And people should buy. I told Peachy she could you do this for recommendation, but instead, I will say people should buy Domestic Extremist, Peachy's excellent book, and sign up for your Substack called Extremely Domestic.
PeachyKeenan.com. I just wrote about the riots a couple days ago. Yeah, check it out.
Excellent. And I believe there's another book in the works, but that's all secret, so we will leave that for another time. Good one.
You heard it on the Roundtable.
Yeah, that's right. No, she brags about it on Twitter, but teases people, so that we're just doing the same here. Well, thank you all once again for listening to the Roundtable. If you'd like to support our work, go to www.claremont.org/donate. Check out all that we're up to at the website. Go to dc.claremont.org for the latest on our work in DC and around the states on education policy and much else. Go, of course, to Spencer's proper day job at Claremont Review Books. ClaremontReviewBooks.com. New issue is out and online. Paper versions are getting mailed hither and yon. And we're working on the summer issue. I know it's a little late for starting the production cycle. And then I will tease a special double issue 25th anniversary edition of Claremont Review Books for fall, winter. So lots of good stuff over there. And always, as always, check out AmericanMind.org. Please rate the show, spread the love, tell your friends, neighbors, and fellow citizens, even the illegals on their way out. Let them improve their lot.
Parting word.
CRB, yeah.
Gratuitous. I apologize. That was
Never back down. Never.
And thanks, of course, as always, to the production and engineering crew, the brothers Gannon, Ryan, and Jake Gannon. And we will talk to you all next week.